Huh? Oh, you got some. I don't know. Let's see if Jack. I'd say hi to yeah, they rush to St. Joe's. I came up on my phone. I get events. Recognize the shoulder. Let's go. He's in with fine green I don't know if he's still beating the charge out with us. I don't think so. He wants to give that up. For a job. They hire you? Hey, stop it, man. I was looking at RV's carports. But I wouldn't have probably told you right now. Well, she was in
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy. I'm the president and CEO of Community Wellness Partners, and it's my honor and privilege to welcome you to this evening's Parkinson Speaker Series event. Thank you. Community Wellness Partners, from our humble beginnings as just the Lutheran home in Clinton over 100 years ago, now we are one of the largest nonprofit multi-site organizations in New York State and in the country. We care for over 1,300 people every day through 25 different programs. And so chances are someone you know, someone you love has been cared for or touched by Community Wellness Partners. So very proud to lead such a wonderful organization that has such a great impact upon people's lives. Today we have a great speaker, we have a great event, and I'm going to now introduce our Parkinson's Program Director, Allison Swartz. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Our team is continuously learning and acquiring new degrees and certifications as we advance in our careers. I noticed on LinkedIn that Jeremy has some extra letters in his name. Congratulations, Dr. Jeremy Rudder, PhD in gerontology, for his most recent accomplishment. Good evening. It's a pleasure to see you all. Welcome to the William and Rita Abraham Parkinson's Speaker Series. Thank you to the Abraham family for sponsoring this series, which serves as an honor to the Abraham family's late mother and wife, Rita, and allows us to bring to you topics related to Parkinson's disease. And before I introduce our speaker, let's take a short commercial break and share our evidence-based Parkinson's programs and Parkinson's team. Cycling with Parkinson's is a cycling on a spin-style stationary bike that can reduce the symptoms of Parkinson's. This program was launched this fall and is in a pilot stage this semester with Utica University's Doctoral of Physical Therapy program students. The Lee Silverman Voice Therapy Big and Loud programs are effective treatments for people in all stages of Parkinson's. Big helps people with Parkinson's improve mobility and daily living activities. Loud helps people with their speech and communication. Rocksteady Boxing is a non-contact boxing program that aims to improve the quality of life for people with Parkinson's. And each month we host a Parkinson's support group that meets on the third Tuesday of each month. And thank you to Rosemary Taylor, who's led this program, and we will continue with Parkinson's support in 2026. Did you know that Community Wellness Partners is a certified Parkinson's disease care business? 4 of us at Community Wellness Partners completed a certification with the Parkinson's and Movement Disorder Alliance. The knowledge that we gained in having passed a rigorous exam earned us the certification of Parkinson's disease care advocates and Community Wellness Partners as a certified Parkinson's disease care business. Only 2 other organizations in New York State have earned such credentials. One is in Long Island and the other the lower Hudson Valley. We are the only one in the top 3/4 of the state of New York. Some of you met our Parkinson's team, and I have some great numbers to share with you for people with Parkinson's in our rehab program. 53% have made improvement in balance, 137% improvement in endurance, and 281% improvement in strength in people with Parkinson's who've gone through the LSVT Big Therapy program. Our Parkinson's team includes Trevor Gates, Doctor of Physical Therapy who specializes in LSVT Big, Julia Downing, also Doctor of Physical Therapy, who also specializes in Big, Katie Conway, our speech language therapist, Dee Hammeline, Physical Therapist Assistant, Kristen Sellers, our occupational therapist, Kelly Bowden, Physical Therapist Assistant, and Maureen Ferrugia, who's in our Wellness Center and has been in the fitness field for 20 years, currently teaches Rocksteady Boxing. So please visit the Rehab Therapy and Rocksteady Boxing booths, and some of you already have. Please sign up for one of our programs and learn about more of our amazing Parkinson's team. So some of you have, or all of you have, questions in the middle of your table for our Q&A after our speaker finishes. So we'll do our very best to have those questions answered for you, given the amount of time allotted for this portion of the program. So fill out your slips, raise your hand, and then we'll have somebody come and get them from you, and then bring them to the podium, and we'll ask and get the answers from Dr. Krishnamurthy or one of us that's with Community Wellness Partners. Okay, neurosurgeon Satish Krishnamurthy, MD, is a top neurosurgeon with decades of experience. He joins us today from his recent appointment at CNY Brain and Spine, Wynn Hospital, and is a professor of neurosurgery and biology for SUNY Polytechnic Institute. Before coming to this area, he served for Upstate Medical University in the Department of Neurology in Syracuse, as well as with St. Joseph's, also in the SYR. His credentials include a fellowship in residency with Penn State Milton S. Hershey Medical Center in Pennsylvania, and there's so much more. The Rome Sentinel claims, and I quote, Dr. Krishnamurthy has trained some of the best neurosurgeons in the country during his time as a professor and interim chair at SUNY Upstate. Now he's shifting his focus to something close to his heart, bringing high-level care to rural communities that need it most. His work with CNY Brain and Spine and SUNY Poly is on groundbreaking research in the area of neuroscience and robotics. This is all part of a larger effort to make our area a leader in neurosurgical innovation. Dr. Krishnamurthy, thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for dedicating your research and work to the Mohawk Valley.
Allison, thank you so much for inviting me to present to this audience, and I'm honored to do so. And it's a great pleasure to be here in Mohawk Valley and help this community. It's a privilege. One of the things that I learned by preparing for this talk was that the care for Parkinson's patients has truly been revolutionary, and it's a modern day miracle for medicine. It's almost 200 years now since James Parkinson, who was a it's almost 200 years ago that James Parkinson, who was a surgeon in London, who first described the Parkinson's disease as an essay on shaking palsy. It's a 66-page monograph based on his observations on 6 people who had this disease. And nothing happened after that. He said, this is an important entity and we need to study it and he implored other scientists to look more carefully at this disorder. For 50 years, nothing happened. And the scene shifts to France, where they had this place called Salpêtrière, which is it was converted as a from a gunpowder factory in Louis XIII regime, and made it into a hospice facility where there were 5,000 patients in that hospice facility, and 3,000 of them had neurologic disorders. So Charcot was a neurologist, and he basically conducted classes for anybody who would listen to him, including his students. Some of the names that you will recognize. One was Freud, and the other was Tourette disorder. And he was very good at describing the entire spectrum of Parkinson's disease, including the tremor that he examined through putting feathers on people's heads and showing people that this tremor is different. And he recorded it, which you can see on this right-hand side of the slide, right there, the difference between regular tremor and Parkinsonian tremor being different. And he described the apathy, the depression, and the handwriting changes, micrographia, and all of the complete picture was described during his time. Then there is a big lull till about 75 years ago, when things get a little bit more pacey in terms of Parkinson's science and research. They were using this reserpine, which is a plant product called alkaloids, and they were using it for treating high blood pressure and some of the psychiatric conditions. And some of us remember reading it in pharmacology textbooks. It's no longer used, but reserpine, when they used it, it caused symptoms such as Parkinson's disease. And this Swedish pharmacologist, Arvid Carlsson, was studying reserpine and seeing how does it cause Parkinson's disease and how to remediate that. And during his work, he figured out that when you induce this Parkinson's disease by giving animals reserpine, the only thing that improves symptoms was a new chemical at that time called DOPA. DOPA was felt to be an intermediate step to getting epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are the hormones that surge through your body when somebody threatens you or when you get all excited and you're running through. And dopamine is one of the intermediate steps in the manufacturing of that compound. Now, Carlson showed that only DOPA can reverse the symptoms, and that set the stage for treatment of Parkinson's. In 1960, just 3 years later, this gentleman was looking at dopamine and how different parts of the brain has different levels of dopamine. And he found that normal basal ganglia, which is the part of the brain that deals with coordination of the movements, has the largest amount of dopamine. And he was a pathologist, so he had access to the brains of patients who had died of Parkinson's disease, and he showed that 80 to 90% of the dopamine in normal brains was not found in Parkinson's disease, that they had lost 80% of the dopamine cells. So this was a second step. On top of what dopamine was felt to be reversing reserpine-induced Parkinson's. And now this gentleman showing that this is definitely depleted in Parkinson's disease. He was in Vienna, Parnakivitz, and he told one of his colleagues, hey, give dopa to people, it will get better. And they gave dopa, but they gave very little dopa, and it did not get better at all. So they said, it doesn't work. That's a bad idea. Nothing works for Parkinson's. But Coetzee, who was in Brookhaven National Laboratory, he was studying manganese toxicity. And the reason he was studying manganese toxicity was that whether it's military or otherwise, in industry, they had a lot of manganese exposure. Now, manganese exposure also gives rise to something like Parkinson's disease, but it's not a Parkinson's disease. It's due to a loss of chemical in an adjacent part of the substantia nigra, which is called the globus pallidus, and that causes Parkinson's syndrome. And his job was to figure out how to treat these patients. And he had read about the works, and he said, I think I can treat manganism and Parkinson's. And he took just 20 patients with Parkinson's disease, and he gave them a graded high dose of L-DOPA, and that fixed all the symptoms of Parkinson's: the tremor, the rigidity, the bradykinesia, and imbalance, postural instability. So he took videos before and after to convince people that it actually works. So he sent in multiple requests for conducting his clinical trial. Nobody funded him because nobody believed him. And so he finally got money for his work. At that time, they were worried about Sino-American relationships, and Chairman Mao had Parkinson's disease. And so they said, hey, if you got an idea for Parkinson's cure, maybe we can help Chairman Mao and get better relationship with China. I don't know whether that story is completely accurate. It's found only in one source. But anyway, he got his money for medical scientific research from Atomic Energy Commission, which is interesting. So basically, L-DOPA was then investigated in a clinical trial. This was 69. In 1969, they conducted a large-scale trial, and the trial showed clear benefit for using L-DOPA. 1970, FDA approved the L-DOPA for treatment. But L-DOPA was problematic. Given by itself, it can cause nausea, vomiting, and other issues because you have to just tank up all the body with this chemical in order for it to be effective. But the only part that is effective is 1 to 2% that goes into the brain. So they found a method to stop the body from disintegrating the DOPA, and the chemical is called carbidopa, or that's basically a decarboxylase enzyme that is blocked in the rest of the body, so that chemical does not go into the brain. So the DOPA that we give goes primarily to the brain, and it doesn't get degraded elsewhere. So you can reduce the amount of DOPA that we give. And in 1975, we got the FDA approval for what is called a Sinemet, which is carbidopa, L-DOPA, which is the standard treatment that we use right now. So in general, we have several categories of drugs. And we know that dopamine is not there in patients with Parkinson's disease. And dopamine, carbidopa, is the gold standard. It provides significant symptom relief in 80 to 90% of the patients. And the effectiveness does decrease over a period of time. But there are other medications like dopamine agonists, which are like dopamine, but they're not dopamine, but they work like dopamine. And there are substances called MAOB inhibitors, because there are enzymes that prevent the degradation of the dopamine. And there are medications called COMT inhibitors, again, another class of medications that prevent the degradation of the medication. So these medications have been the standard of care for a while. And in the 80s, there was a little bit of a switch, which I'll come to later. But now there is new advancement in just the drug delivery itself. There are, because of the oral administration of these compounds, they can get absorbed in different ways. We don't all absorb the same amount of drug and put it inside our brain. And there are now drug pumps that go into the belly, just like the insulin pump. It's a small needle, and there is a pump, and it gives a finite amount of medication. And these pumps can be adjusted to what the person requires. There's a pump called Vyalev, which is the DOPA medication, and the other is called Onapgo, which is a dopamine agonist, which is the apomorphine pump. And these were recently approved in 2025. So that's the cost. Hopefully that cost will come down. It's pretty expensive. Parallel to the development of the drugs, there were surgical solutions that were offered. There was a neurosurgeon who was trying to do something, and he clipped an artery that was not supposed to be clipped, and the person had a stroke. But interestingly, the part of the area of the brain that died also treated his Parkinson's disease, and that's called a pallidus. The pallidotomy is a method of killing that part of the brain, which will help remove the symptoms or make the symptoms of Parkinson's better. So it was a serendipitous discovery, which was later used to help treat a lot of Parkinson's patients. So people started putting in needles and burning that part of the brain called, radio frequency lesions and other things. So initially they started burning the part of the brain and calling pallidotomy. This was in the 60s and the 70s. And when about late 70s, they started using microelectrodes to record what they're trying to burn. So they wanted to know exactly where they are. And when you push the needle, when you push the electrode through, you get different signals, and the signals will help locate where you're going to place the electrode and burn. When they were doing that, this man, who was in Grenoble, France, Alain Louis Benabit, who made a startling discovery. He said, if I stimulate at a low frequency, then there is increase in tremor. He was pushing the electrode in awake people into the brain, and mercifully, the brain doesn't feel any pain. You push the electrode and you can test whether the tremor is there or not. And he used to use a low frequency stimulation, and the tremor would get worse. And say, aha, this is the part that I need to burn. And he used to burn it. But he also was curious to see if there is a high frequency stimulation, what happens? He did a high frequency stimulation, and it stopped the tremor. And he said, why am I burning the brain? We can actually use a stimulation, and that became the deep brain stimulation. And he is one of the pioneers of using deep brain stimulation to help patients with Parkinson's disease. Candidates that are best suited for DBS have a short-term duration of disease, and they get good response to dopa, but get dyskinesias or abnormal movements because of excess dopa. And they should have good cognitive function because they need to use the stimulator. And now the deep brain stimulator is basically you have two electrodes going into your head, one here and one there, and there's a battery pack that is sitting in your chest, and you can program it. And subsequently, just this last year, 2024, they approved what is called as the adaptive deep brain stimulation. Now, there was only so many programs that you could set on the programmer for deep brain stimulation to remove the bad effects of Parkinson's disease or relieve the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Adaptive deep brain stimulation uses a similar thing, but it also senses what's happening in the area where the electrode is, and it can tell whether there is a increase or decrease in the amount of tremors that are generated from that area. It's called adaptive deep brain stimulation. So it changes based on the signals that are coming in. So it's responsive. And there are several devices like that in the market now. One is for epilepsy, it's called responsive neurostimulation, and the other is for Parkinson's disease. Again, just approved by the FDA. Shifting gears, there is a machine called focused ultrasound. Remember how people used to push the electrodes? Now this is without the electrodes. You can use an ultrasound, which is high frequency, penetrates the skull, and it goes into the brain. And this is recently approved for Parkinson's tremor. I think it was 2018 or so. And Fry brothers were the ones that popularized this instrument, and now it's available. There are several units in the city, and I think one in Binghamton area, where you can get the tremors treated. So the unfortunate part of this is that a person has to have no hair in order for the ultrasound to get through. So you have to completely shave the head, which is not too bad for a man, but it's a totally different thing for a woman. Now there is cell therapy, the stem cells. There is a lot of debate about stem cells. Oh my God, why are you using stem cells, et cetera, et cetera. So Mass General just recently is involved in a trial using our own body's stem cells and reprogramming it to make more dopamine and putting it into the brain. And that's an acceptable measure for most of the people here or elsewhere. And using our own cells will help prevent any immune reaction for transplants. I mean, some of you or most of you are familiar with how you have to take rejection medications if you get a kidney transplant or a heart transplant or a lung transplant. So this avoids all of that. So there's a phase 3 clinical trial, which is basically phase 1 is whether it's safe, phase 2 is whether it's effective, phase 3 is where the true test is, whether it is as good as the standard of care. And there are gene therapies. I'm not going to delve into details, but there are gene therapies that are available. And talking of gene therapies, I want to talk about why we get Parkinson's disease. Back in the day, there was a pathologist called Louis who figured out that a lot of patients with Parkinson's disease have, when you have a cell and a nucleus. You shouldn't have anything else in between the cell and the nucleus. There's cytoplasm. There should be no abnormal structures inside the cytoplasm. And he found that there was clumps of material sitting there. And he called them Lewy bodies. He didn't name them Lewy bodies, but they called them bodies of blue material on the stain. But subsequently, they were renamed and called Lewy bodies, giving him the actual credit. And he found that this is found in all patients with Parkinson's disease, no matter how early, how late they are. And in 1983, they found that they're made up of these filaments, and in 1990s, they had a interesting sequence of events that led to a discovery that would change the way we think about Parkinson's disease. In 1990s, there was a large Italian-American family in southern Italy, coming from southern Italy, that all had early Parkinson's disease. And they looked at these patients and said, there was something wrong with your genes, and they looked at the genetic analysis. And this guy, Mihail Polymeropoulos, who runs a company now on discovering new drugs, new gene therapies for different conditions. He was working at the NIH, and he found that all these families have, among all the thousands of genes we have, one gene with a lot of messages. Each message has 3 codes, 3 points that translate into one part of the protein called amino acid. And one of them is abnormal, and the chromosome 4. So this was called alpha-synuclein. And this is the key problem, key ingredient that predicts whether you get Parkinson's disease. And these people, Spallanzani and Goddard, they showed that, remember the Lewy bodies? The Lewy bodies had alpha-synuclein in them. So the story goes that Dr. Brock used the alpha-synuclein, the chemical, to stain the alpha-synuclein, and showed that you have a progressive disease where this alpha-synuclein starts in a particular part and spreads through the brain. And that predicts the progression of the Parkinson's disease. First, it starts in a part called the dorsal motor nucleus of the vagus and in the olfactory bulb. That's why Parkinson's patients lose the sense of smell first. And then it goes to the lower part of the brainstem, and then goes to the upper part of the brainstem. And only in stage 3 that you get the motor symptoms. That's when we were recognizing it. And subsequently climbs up the ladder and goes into the brain, and that's when we get dementia from Parkinson's disease. So this actually helps us because this alpha-synuclein can be used to predict who's going to get late-stage disease, and it can help not with DOPA treatment or the pumps or the deep brain stimulation, but with the gene therapies. You want to get to the genes and replace the genes or get the stem cells early in the disease to prevent the problem. You don't want to wait till the end of the game to figure out what to do. You want to get to the early game. This is a game changer, and you will see a lot of skin biopsies being taken to predict who's going to get Parkinson's disease. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to introduce my student, Stephanie Kuseva, who is who's done some work on helping me get how digital revolution that is around us can help people with Parkinson's disease. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Krishnamurthy, for the warm introduction, and I'm very grateful to be here to speak to all of you tonight. So my presentation is focusing more on the up-and-coming innovations, devices, items that are being introduced in today's day and age that you may already have laying around at home or that are currently being worked on to assist those with Parkinson's disease. I hope to educate you and bring awareness to these items, so as caregivers, family members, even healthcare professionals, you can look into these items and possibly suggest them to those who have Parkinson's disease. All right, so first things first, I want to talk about something called wearable sensors, or your personal healthcare detectives. This first product is called Continuous Home Monitoring System. So this isn't something that's commercially available yet, but researchers and scientists have been working on devices that are implemented into one's home. So if you look on the wall in the picture, the kind of white box that's on the side, what this does is it tracks an individual's movements and how they are going about on their daily lives by bouncing off radio signal waves on their body. So an individual just walk around at home, going on doing their daily thing, and this helps to collect data on how an individual is moving around and how their Parkinson's disease may be progressing on. So again, this is not something that's currently available at the moment to the general public, but it is something that we are using in research to collect this data and information. Now this next device, I'm sure some of you may already have this or are currently wearing it right now, but smartwatches can actually also be used or recommended for individuals with Parkinson's. If you don't have one, it can be very useful for tracking things like your sleep schedule. They can be tracking your movement, your activity. You can set reminders on there when to take medications. And if you don't have your phone nearby or somebody to remind you, you could just have it dinging right on your wrist and, hey, don't forget to take this medication. So it's very useful. And these vary in prices. Go to Walmart, go to Best Buy, you can see what's best suitable for you. And this is something that you can consider getting for an individual with Parkinson's if you don't already have one. And something also that's also not commercially available yet at the moment, but Parkinson's researchers are working on is something called the Key Duo and Quantitative Digitography Care. So the idea behind this is that we want to implement additional research and data collection methods that can be done at home rather than an individual going into a facility. So what this does is it tracks fine motor skills of individuals with Parkinson's disease by simple finger tapping motions. And again, kind of similar to the monitoring systems, this can help us track the progression of Parkinson's disease and see how it may be affecting their mobility and their movement. So kind of keeping similar to the idea of things that we can implement into the home, let's make our home smart, why don't we? So first things first, I'm sure, again, some of you have probably seen these or are currently having these in your home. So here I have pictured the Google Play, the Amazon Alexa, and not only are these great for, setting reminders, again, for medications or activating your lighting system in your home, but this can also act as a great speech therapy option for those with Parkinson's disease. Because, as you may or may not know, you have to speak very clearly, loudly, slowly for these devices to understand you. So instead of saying, hey, Alexa, play Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, you could say, hey, Alexa, remind me to take this medication at 6 p.m. Later today. So this could be helpful for individuals, and you could repurpose these devices for family members with Parkinson's individuals and use it for other things other than what it is originally advertised for. Now, if you don't want Alexa telling you to take your medication, you could also look and buy things such as automatic medication dispensers. So again, this is something that you could have your caregiver or your family member set up. Have the medication put into the device, and again, it will dispense the medication at the appropriate time, send you a notification on when to take it, and this could be very helpful to ensure that you don't forget it and that you have a proper regimen. Additional environmental sensors can be implemented in the home. So something, again, as I mentioned before, motion detected lighting systems are being used in research to kind of help track, again, the movement of individuals with Parkinson's, kind of getting to know how they move around their home and their activity, if they're very active, if they're not very active. Another thing that this could be helpful for is avoiding things such as falls. So, say somebody's walking around at nighttime, instead of going and trying to find the lights if you're feeling unstable, it will automatically detect you moving, the lights will turn on, and it can help avoid accidents like this. All right, so this one is pretty cool, but we have something called robotic exoskeletons that is currently being worked on in our research. I'll show you the video in just a moment, but basically we have products called the Rewalk Exobionics wearable robotic garments. So basically the idea of this is it's kind of like, say, imagining you're putting on a pair of trousers, and what it does is that there are sensors located on the device that kind of give you that extra oomph or that extra push as an individual is walking. Now, no, unfortunately, you will not turn into the modern day Iron Man, but this could be helpful for engaging movement and mobility and helping individuals again those that have Parkinson's. I'll play a video showing, kind of demonstrating how the device works. So as you can see, this is kind of in like a therapy situation. Pretty cool, right? So again, this isn't a device that is commercially yet available. However, those are the steps that we are working to get towards. Unless you have $100,000 in your pocket that you're willing to go and spend on this product. But it is something that healthcare providers can consider implementing into, say, a specialized form of physical therapy to kind of help those individuals regain that mobility and give that extra, like I said, push, working with their movement, their muscle, and so on. So it's definitely something that can be considered in the next couple of years, hopefully. Okay, kind of on the similar topic, so something also new and innovative that researchers are working on is immersing virtual reality into therapy sort of care. So, AI and everything like that is becoming more and more popular recently, and scientists are working on creating these sort of simulations that individuals with Parkinson's can immerse themselves into this reality, into this different dimension in this world. So, anybody ever play the Wii Fit or the Xbox Fit before? I don't know, maybe I'm a different generation. This isn't common anymore, but it's kind of similar to that. So you put on the headset as an individual and see a therapy-like situation, and they are immersed into just an environment that makes it safe, that makes it fun. It doesn't feel like they're getting medical treatment. It feels like they're just playing a regular game. But it helps to, again, engage that movement, that interaction, that mobility, without them even knowing they're getting medical treatment per se. So I'll show a video as an example.
Sandy Williams is buckled up and ready for action. It looks and feels like she's part of a video game, but it's actually high-tech rehab for her Parkinson's disease.
We know in neurorehabilitation, you have to challenge patients for them to get better. And so this provides a very safe environment for that to occur.
The virtual reality treadmill has 2 belts, one for each foot, and a base that moves to mimic different surfaces. It can also react and adjust to a patient's movement, and a wraparound video screen completely immerses the patient into a real-life scenario.
When over that little hill, you feel it in the machine.
Rather than just having a patient walk or an individual walk up and down, a standard mechanical track, now what we can do is we can change the environment in a very dynamic fashion.
Special programs are designed to work on specific skill sets while providing positive feedback. During weekly appointments at Cleveland Clinic, Sandy works with her therapist on gait and increasing stride length by touching her toe to a box. Other times, she's asked to target birds and butterflies while walking. This helps with balance, and it satisfies that competitive spirit.
I enjoy doing the birds and the butterflies, that's why even they don't kill them. Not that I enjoy the killing part, but I do enjoy the challenge. Can I get them? I know once I slow down, they can come from my food move. So I'm willing to do whatever I can to keep myself going.
At Cleveland Clinic, I'm Erica Foreman.
Alright, so if you have, again, one of these devices at home, this is just another way to repurpose it and get those individuals engaged, get them moving, and especially if, say, they're not really able to go outside and want to walk out in nature, this is an alternative that family members and caregivers can consider to kind of incorporate that into their daily routine. So prices vary, obviously, the Wii Fit and I know the Xbox 360, those are older sort of models, so it can be anywhere from like $100 to $500. Again, it can vary. The VR headsets, because those are newer models, it can be a little bit more expensive, probably from $500 plus. But even so, I mean, I know younger kids may already have these in their cabinets. You just gotta wipe the dust off and plug it back in and you could use it and get it going. But it's definitely something you can consider, or you could do it more in like an actual patient setting. Yes, so these devices, you can go to, again, Amazon, a wonderful thing, Walmart, Best Buy, and you could look into these and possibly get one at home and have those individuals use them. All right, so speaking on the same topic as devices, phones, we all have them. Why not use them to our advantage? There are multiple apps nowadays that we can download and use to, again, kind of track our symptoms, track our medication, speak to our providers, talk to the portal, educate ourselves on the new news about Parkinson's. And these can all be downloaded through, your Google Play Store, your App Store. Might as well, why not? You all have phones in your pocket, or at least the majority of us do. So this is just something else that we can consider and add on. All right. Again, on the same topic as far as communication through the internet, again, that's a big thing nowadays. And we want to make things easier for individuals with Parkinson's, especially since tremors tend to kind of interfere and can make it a bit difficult using these devices. So again, on Amazon or Walmart or whatever, you can get things like a larger keyboard, so it's easier for them to type with a key guard. You can do a trackball mouse so they don't have to worry about clicking, because again, sometimes tremors can interfere with that. You can get a touchpad so they can just move it with their fingers rather than clicking. Or nowadays we do have softwares that you can just download onto your computer, and this can help stabilize the mouse cursor on your screen. So if you see in the video, the mouse cursor is moving around, the software will eventually stabilize it so that it's not shaking around so much. And this is something that you can just simply download onto your laptop, your computer. Make it a lot easier to navigate the computer screen. And this is something that could just be downloaded right off the internet. Right. Moving on, nothing wrong with traditional and classic items. This is something that I think you can find in a Star Wars movie, but regular canes, you just elevate it into something called a laser cane. So basically what this does is it provides a visual aid, as you can see the red line that is demonstrated here, so that individuals can kind of get that, as I said, visual aid of where to take their next step and kind of promote that movement and mobility. This is, again, something that a lot of doctors' offices may provide you a script for, may possibly get medical insurance coverage, but they also do have these things online as well. And again, traditional walking poles, traditional walkers, you can spice things up by adding accessories to your devices. Look for walkers that have brakes, a seated cushion, baskets for you to put your medications in, your paperwork in, so that way you have it to carry around with you. And these are all traditional. There's nothing wrong with these. I figured I mentioned these in here as well. And finally, the last product or device that I want to talk about is something called the Gyno Spark Spoon. So everybody's got to eat, right? I'm sure we will after this presentation, or at least I hope so. So this is something that, again, you can find on Amazon that individuals can use while at dinner time. Again, tremors can make it difficult transitioning, picking up the food. If you have a tremor, it might not make it as seamless. What this spoon does is it kind of counteracts that shaking movement to make it a seamless transition from the plate to your mouth. And again, you can just see a simple demonstration of this gentleman using the spoon and how it kind of stabilizes that shaking motion. This is what the regular spoon. And then this is what the spark spoon. So you can see kind of how it moves with the individual and counteracts that tremor. So that way the food will actually go into your mouth and not on the table, hopefully. So what can you do? Obviously, you want to consult your healthcare team first. You want to see and document why these items may be medically necessary for your family members. There are state tech act programs that you can look in your state to see where you can access these technologies, these devices, and these materials. And you could even look up trials of these devices before you consider purchasing them as well. But it's always important to discuss with your healthcare providers, with your family, to get this additional support. I'd just like to thank again Dr. Satish Krishnamurthy and the speaker series for inviting me up to talk. I'd like to bring it back to Dr. K as he'll wrap this presentation up.
I don't have any more slides, but I want to really thank all of you for coming to be a participant in this conversation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do think that it's important to hear back from you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Krishnamurthy, and thank you all for attending. Please fill out the questions that you may have already, so just raise your hand. We have Connor in the back and our therapy team also. So if you have a question, they'll pick up the slips of paper from you and then bring them up here. Okay, first question, problem, visual hallucinations. Tried Nuplazid for 10 weeks with no relief. Can anything else be done? Also on carbidopa, levodopa.
I really don't think I'm capable of answering this question, only because I'm not a neurologist. I don't prescribe medications. So I think you should talk to your neurologist. There are medication-related problems can be resolved by changing a different strategy. So there are a lot of medications available now, and including the drug pumps. One of the reasons because we looked at different options and came up with the drug pumps as a medical community is to decrease the number of side effects. It's not acceptable to have visual hallucinations. And I think my guess, if I were to guess, is excess dopamine. So you can supplement it with another drug that might help relieve the visual hallucinations. But don't take my word for it. Please ask a neurologist. Is Parkinson's disease hereditary? Yes. on some occasions. Most of the Parkinson's patients do not transmit the disease to the next generation or did not inherit from their previous generation. There are small families like the family that I talked about from Italy that have the genetic defect, but most Parkinson's cases are not hereditary. It can be. This is a great question. The question is, how early does the Parkinson's gene have to be detected in order for it to assist with the progression of the disease? I think the earlier, the better. How do I know? We know this from other disorders, right? You have early elevation of cholesterol and you treat it, you don't get a heart disease. Anything that is, it's like a tiger cub and a tiger, right? A tiger cub, yeah, it's a tiger, but you can pick it up in your hands and put it back in the jungle. Tiger is a totally different level of problem, right? You need a whole bunch of people, a net and a gun and all of that stuff. So it's a very different problem. So the scale and the order of magnitude of problems are very different. So the beauty of finding the gene and the disease early is to say, hey, can I treat it with gene therapy? Can I treat it with stem cell therapy? That's the beauty of it.
Next question is for community partners. The next question is for community wellness partners. Are your programs covered by Medicare and insurance? Yeah, some of them are. And some of our exercise programs are a very small fee. And if somebody cannot afford any of those types of programs, we also have scholarship opportunities available for some of those programs. So you're never going to be without having that opportunity to take part in one of our programs. So the other question is Parkinson's hereditary? So that's been answered. Do cells slow down or die?
Do cells slow down or die? All cells eventually die. And the problem with some of these cells with this disorder, which specifically affect the neurons that produce dopamine, is that it causes issues with the motor symptoms. Now, this alpha-synuclein product that accumulates in the cell that goes spreading from cell to cell in the same person, and that's how the progression happens. Now, we don't understand the exact mechanism, how the transmission occurs and how to prevent the transmission from one cell to another cell. If we understood that, we could also have a different class of treatments where you can say, hey, it's already gone to your, from skin to your lower part of the brain, can we stop it by using this treatment so you don't get motor symptoms and dementia from it? Are all cases genetic? No. Actually, very small portion of it is genetic. The whole idea of looking into genes as a starting point is to understand where the problem is. Okay, so if you look at a mess of data, mess of information, and you see a line going through some part of the information, and you see the branches come through, right? If you see all the leaves from top, and you don't see the branches or the trunk of the tree, then you wonder, where is all these leaves coming from, right? And it's a perspective shift. When you see the gene, you change your perspective and you say, hey, there's the trunk, there's the branches, there's the big branch, there's a small branch, and now I can get rid of the tree. Here you go, get rid of the stem. So it's a perspective. I think finding the gene changes the perspective, and that's what is the most important aspect of finding the genes. That's a question that trespasses the boundary of my knowledge. What natural supplements could be helpful with muscle spasms? You know, magnesium comes into my mind, but that's nothing to do with my medical education and more to do with what my patients have told me. But I have no idea. So can't answer this question. Something for me to educate myself. So I'm going to read these questions backwards. What do you think of biotin riboflavin treatment effectiveness? No idea. Sorry. What type of health insurance seems to provide the best coverage for deep brain stimulation? Hopefully, that's what the first question is. What are the outcomes of deep brain stimulation? Excellent. They just published a long-term study. This Grenoble group, Dr. Benabit's group, published a long-term study of a little over 1,000 patients where they had great outcomes in it's called the UPDRS scoring system, and it's called the Universal Parkinson's Disease Research, whatever, scoring system. And they found that all the 4 components improved with deep brain stimulation. And now the FDA has approved the adaptive deep brain stimulation system based on some of the results that they've gotten. So in the hope that we can continue to make progress in this reversible method. Instead of killing the part of the brain, we can keep the brain alive but modify the signals. And we do deep brain stimulation across the country, and so health insurance approves it. Otherwise, we won't be able to provide that care to people. Can COVID cause Parkinson's disease? Again, no idea. No, there is something called as Parkinsonism, and the Parkinson's disease is the disease where you have alpha-synuclein and all these inclusion bodies and all of that stuff. There is Parkinsonism, where there are a lot of things that can make you look like you have Parkinson's disease. Recipe is one of them. Manganese is another one of them. Pesticide exposure sometimes can cause Parkinson's like symptoms. There are a whole host of things, including hydrocephalus, which can cause Parkinson's disease-like symptoms. And you get rid of the hydrocephalus, Parkinsonism goes away. So it's not true Parkinson's unless you have all these features. So if COVID or other viruses can cause Parkinson's symptoms, it may not be true Parkinson's. How do you find out if you are a candidate for gene therapy? No idea, because we are not there yet. We are just about 10 years behind schedule for that, answering that question. How do you find out if you are a candidate for deep brain stimulation? You just have to go to a neurologist that is associated with a surgeon who's doing the deep brain stimulation. I would suggest New York City, Cleveland Clinic, all of those places which do high volume deep brain stimulation, and they have a variety of therapies available. Rochester doesn't do it. Yeah. There are small places and there are bigger places. The bigger places offer you multiple options, and the smaller places, if you're not a candidate for deep brain stimulation, they shrug their shoulders. But it's preferable. You can get your treatment anywhere, but you want to know what options you have, depending on the state of your disease. There's always value in getting second opinions. I really say that in a most respectful manner. because individual physicians still look at life in a particular way. The particular way is based on what experiences they have, where they were educated, and what pedigree they were brought up in terms of their education and what exposure they have. And I still send people to bigger places only because there is more exposure, there's more forward thinking, forward-looking strategies that are available that we are not familiar with when we are working in a smaller place. But having said that, you can decide, you can explore, but keep the care local because it gets very expensive, from what my patients say, to go elsewhere and park yourself for days or months on end and get treatment there. So, yeah, absolutely. Here is another question that gives me homework. Are there any studies on medical marijuana? I don't know. I'm not a very good student of medical marijuana. I haven't spent that much time. I know that there are some benefits that are listed for tremors especially, but that's very peripheral knowledge, so I'm not going to comment on it. I'm happy to help you investigate it if you're interested. I don't quite understand this question. When kidneys are being damaged by artery? So
RYTERY, rhetoric?
There is something called as vagal nerve stimulation, which is very different from deep brain stimulation. No, vagal nerve stimulation is a totally different strategy, and the science of it tells us that vagal nerve stimulation can do a whole lot of things, including stroke rehabilitation, help in stroke rehabilitation, help in decreasing the chances of sepsis, and it sounds like magic if you read about all the scientific benefits of vagal nerve stimulation. And I don't think there is brain stimulation that works for any kidney problem. I don't think even vagal nerve stimulation works for kidney problems. But kidney problems have a standard way of getting managed, which is very well established all the way up to kidney transplant. Yeah, so this is a good question. The pump medications you mentioned, do they decrease hallucination? Can you discuss this in more detail? Yeah, I haven't prescribed a pump. I learned about it recently. So the pump medications can be titrated. You can decrease based on what symptoms you're getting. The abnormal symptoms from Parkinson's should be down, but abnormal symptoms from medication should not go up, right? The balance with the dopa drug or with the apomorphine drug. So everything is a double-edged sword. So you can balance that better with a pump rather than oral medication. Yeah. I don't know the answer to this exact question, but I'm supposing that's why we are going to pumps.
So we have about 5 more minutes when the food will be coming out. So we have a few more questions that'll get us from now to that point. We're going to try to get through these.
Are there environmental causes for Parkinson's? Exposure to radiation like radar and microwave exposure can Parkinson's be related to sleep apnea? The last question, definitely not. Sleep apnea, I would say definitely not given today's scientific knowledge. Exposure to radiation may be a little distant because we have done a lot of radiation work over the centuries. We have radiated since Curie discovered this radiation, ionizing radiation. We have radiated all sorts of things, including the brain multiple times. The radiation-induced Parkinson's is not a disorder that we see often, or any. What environmental causes can cause Parkinson's? I gave you a few examples. Manganese exposure. It's not true Parkinson's disease. There are some pesticides that can cause the same kind of problem, etc., etc. Here's a great question. Last time I worked on this, there were people from the military that wanted to talk to me, discuss agent-oriented Parkinson's. So, since I'm not interested in meeting the military brass, I'm going to step on and not answering that question. I'm pretty sure that there is a link between agent-oriented and so many other disorders, but I think it's still kept under wraps.
Sorry, George.
How to encourage someone to exercise and move more? So that's a very interesting question. And interestingly, dopamine is one of the happy hormones, right? They tell you, oh, they have a dopamine surge. Dopamine has to do with motivation. What is motivation? It's the anticipation that you're going to have a vacation. It's the anticipation that you will win a lottery ticket. Okay, it's the anticipation that you're going to meet somebody that you would love to meet. You know, it's the anticipation surge, and it's a reward surge. It's got a biological benefit to it, but dopamine, loss of dopamine, can also result in what is called as anhedonia or depression, where you have lack of motivation. And people have shown that whether it is Cinemat, L-carbidopa, or the pumps or the deep brain stimulation, that reverses some of this apathy towards life in general and exercise in particular. So there is this feeling of futility that comes with loss of dopamine. I would strongly urge people to adjust the dose and talk to your neurologist for that. So this is a great question. Most of the therapy discussed focused on motor symptoms like tremor. You're probably right. The focused ultrasound is mostly for tremor, but medical therapy not only addresses tremor but also dyskinesia. Now, if you go to cognitive dysfunction, we are not there. There is not many medications that can help with cognitive dysfunction. About the only thing that helps cognitive dysfunction is music. Listening to music that is relevant to you, trying to dance for the music that is relevant to you is very helpful for cognitive improvement. If you take a person and put them in an fMRI and look at their how the brain lights up, it is typically music lights up the entire brain. Your frontal lobes, your temporal lobes, you're listening to the music, temporal lobes light up. Your parietal lobes light up because they're trying to find how to dance, you know, and it has to be relevant. If you play Bollywood to somebody who's never listened to Bollywood, it's not going to work. If you play classical music for somebody who loves jazz, that's not going to work that well. So you got to know what is relevant to the person and what the person grew up with.
Next question. Parts to A, B, and C. That's okay.
So, yeah, these are really difficult symptoms. What about drooling, runny nose, not being able to drive a nail, losing balance, falling backward, accelerated gait? These are troubling symptoms. Some of the balance issues can be reversed with medication. It's adjusting the medication. Unfortunately, I keep saying medication, but the medication has got, the titrating the medication is not just an art, but also has to do with what is called as pharmacogenomics. Every one of us, you see this in the bar very well. You know, somebody takes a single shot and they're gone. And some other guys, they take 13, 14 shots and they're still upright, right? And how does that happen? I mean, it's got nothing to do with the size of the person or anything. It's got to do with the genes that are in us that are activated that either metabolize the alcohol fast or slow, right? So just like that, medications with dopa or Coumadin or any other drug, you know, we think we treat everybody the same way and everybody gets a body weight dose, but that actually doesn't work that well because our genetic composition is very different. We handle the drugs, we deal with the drugs differently. Just like one of my residents used to eat a large pizza, never gained a pound. And if you eat a large pizza, I'll be dieting for the next 3 years. So I think they need to dose that so that we can get improvement in the gait function. So dopa is definitely helpful for improving dopamine agonists or dopa are very useful for improving this balance problem. I don't know about the running nose problem. That's a harder problem. You know, it's a small symptoms, but it's very annoying. It's not helpful in a social setting.
At this point, we're already 15 minutes past our. We're already 15 minutes past our original time frame. However, the doctor is going to be available to answer questions as well as our Parkinson's team. So thank you, Dr. Krishnamurthy, and thank you all for attending. Please fill out your surveys and leave them on the tables or at the registration desk. My contact information is on all of our program flyers. My business cards are on the registration and rehab therapy tables. Enjoy light refreshments. They're rolling out the table now with pizza. So yes, we talked about food, so that's next. We have some food ready for you, beverages as well as some mingling with our Parkinson's team. So thank you again and enjoy the rest of this evening through 7:30 p.m. Have a safe drive home. If Stephanie's available, can you come for a picture?